My corn farm went up in flames at 2 a.m. in a roaring inferno. 20 years of labor turned to ash as orange fire shot 30 feet into the sky and smoke choked my lungs. And while I watched, helpless from my driveway, my HOA president, Clara Bennett, was probably at home celebrating. Instead of dialing 911 like a desperate victim, I pulled out my phone and did something that would unravel her empire. Clara had no idea what kind of storm she had just unleashed. And when investigators finally knocked on her door, the mask she'd worn for years shattered. The queen of HOA. Power. Every third Thursday, Clara held court in her pristine living room. HOA board members sat like disciples at her feet, nodding as she flashed charts and maps. Photos of property violations lined her walls like crime scene evidence. Pins on a zoning map marked problem properties like targets in a war room. She bragged about rising property values under her leadership and read testimonials like scripture. Neighbors didn't follow her out of respect. They followed her out of fear. People crossed the street to avoid her. Those who resisted often gave in, not because they agreed, but because it was easier to survive under Clara's rule. But there was one man she couldn't break. Henry Lawson, a quiet widower who farmed the same land his family had worked for 4 generations. A promise to Linda. Henry's life revolved around his crops and the memorial garden for his late wife, Linda Lawson. Every morning at sunrise, Henry brewed 2 coffees, carried them to the garden, and set one on the bench beside him. "Good morning, honey," he'd whisper to the roses. "Corn's looking good this year. Tomatoes are coming along." He'd even read passages from Linda's gardening journal, asking for advice like she was still guiding him. Before she passed, Linda made Henry promise he would never let developers turn their farm into soulless subdivisions. "This land feeds people," she told him. "Don't let them bury it under condos." It was a vow Henry intended to keep. But Clara saw his farm not as heritage, but as profit waiting to be seized. War against a farmer. One morning, Clara marched across the street with her HOA board, a lawyer, and a cameraman. Her heels struck the pavement like gunfire. "Mr. Lawson," she announced, holding an official-looking document, "your agricultural operations violate zoning laws. You must cease within 30 days. Henry, hands still dirty from pulling weeds, answered quietly, "Ma'am, this land has been in my family for 4 generations. My wife Linda planted those flowers." Clara's reply was ice cold. "Sentiment doesn't protect property values. Progress requires hard choices." From that moment, she launched a systematic campaign against him. Complaints to the city, petitions labeling his farm a nuisance, and even digging into his past. She unearthed his toughest case as a fire investigator, a tragedy where a family perished in an apartment blaze, a case that had haunted Henry for years. She used that guilt as a weapon, whispering doubts about his competence and spreading poison online. Soon, Henry was painted as unstable. Parents wouldn't let kids near his pumpkin patch. Old friends stopped visiting. Even his church distanced itself. Clara had turned a respected fire captain into a neighborhood outcast. Or so she thought. The Broken Farmer Act. Henry didn't fight back. At least, not in ways Clara expected. Instead, he staged defeat. He hammered a for sale sign into his yard, packed boxes, canceled his corn maze. Neighbors whispered, "Poor man." Finally giving up, Clara celebrated with champagne. She threw a party called Community Protection Success Celebration, complete with PowerPoint slides about protecting property values. Guests applauded her courage. Contractors whispered with her in corners. But while Clara was celebrating victory, Henry was building a war room. The hidden operation. Behind his barn doors, Henry had transformed the space into a surveillance hub with the help of Tom Harris, a retired FBI tech specialist. Hidden thermal cameras captured faces in the dark. Directional microphones picked up whispers from hundreds of feet away. Motion sensors uploaded everything to secure servers. While Clara schemed, Henry documented every move. While she manipulated neighbors, he collected evidence. And she had no idea. The plan to burn it all. Clara wasn't content with harassment. She wanted Henry's land destroyed. She roped in Michael Turner, a contractor with debts and projects that depended on her permits. "Accidents happen to stubborn people," Clara told him. Coldly, reluctant, Mike helped gather materials. Clara purchased industrial degreaser, an accelerant, from different stores to avoid suspicion. She studied arson science online, from ignition devices to burn patterns. She rehearsed alibis in her mirror like an actress preparing for her role. Saturday night, she struck. Dressed in dark clothes, Clara and Mike crept onto Henry's land. His cameras recorded everything. Her pouring accelerant around the barn, him fumbling nervously with timers. Whispered conversations about insurance accidents were caught crystal clear. At 2:15 a.m., the devices ignited. Flames roared skyward. But Henry didn't panic. He picked up his phone and called Chief Daniel Morgan, his old colleague. "This isn't a fire," Henry said calmly. "It's arson. And I have everything you need." Justice at the door. Instead of volunteers, a full state arson investigation team rolled in. They mapped accelerant trails glowing under UV light. They traced chemicals to receipts. They collected fragments of devices that matched Mike's toolkit. Henry's synchronized video and audio tied it all together. At 3:15 a.m., investigators knocked on Clara's door. She opened it in her robe, slipping into her concerned neighbor act. "Officers, I saw smoke. Terrible tragedy for Henry. How can I help?" But investigators were ready. They confronted her with internet searches about accelerants, store footage of her purchases, and soil samples from her yard that matched the chemicals. When she tried to claim Henry set his own fire, they revealed the thermal footage, her face, her voice, her crime. Clara's calm snapped into screams. "This is fake. Deep fakes. Lies." But the evidence was undeniable. Then her phone rang. It was her daughter, Emily Bennett. Her voice was steady. "Mom, I've been recording you for weeks. I sent everything to the police. Your notes, your practice sessions, your calls with Mike. It's over." Clara's scream of rage echoed down the street as agents cuffed her on charges of arson, conspiracy, and fraud. The fall of a tyrant. The trial was swift. Emily testified against her own mother. The evidence was airtight: surveillance, receipts, digital records, and Clara's own words. Judge Patricia Williams delivered the sentence: 28 years in federal prison and $500,000 in restitution. Clara showed no remorse. Her husband filed for divorce. Her children changed their names. Her awards were stripped. Her empire of fear was gone. A community reborn. Neighbors who had once avoided Henry came with tears and apologies. They raised funds to help rebuild. Local kids planted crops with him that spring, honoring Linda's memory. Her memorial garden became a community gathering place, with a plaque reading, "In memory of Linda Lawson, who led with love." Henry was elected to the HOA board, ensuring transparency and fairness replaced fear and corruption. And as Clara sat in her prison cell, the community she once terrorized blossomed without her shadow. Ending. The story closed with clarity. Clara Bennett traded freedom for greed. Henry Lawson rebuilt his farm and his dignity. The community chose courage over silence. And justice, once again, proved stronger than fear.